What's up, everybody? It's Bluebear here, and for this week's video, I will be going over the second deck that was ordered by a customer that never got paid for, and I had to make changes to them to fit into my $40 budget Commander Precon offerings. I'm going to start this one a little differently, since this deck had a unique situation. What I'm about to show you is a Thrun, the Last Troll, Voltron build, but that's actually not how this deck originally started. At first, what the person wanted was just a random deck with Dork, Nature's Warden as the general, because they bought the D&D Secret Lair. The issue I ran into was they didn't want a build that was a natural fit for Dork at all. After weeks of back and forth, I figured out that they wanted a Voltron-style build, but no matter how much I tried, they were not willing to change either the general or the style of deck. So I built what they asked for, and ultimately they ended up not purchasing the deck after I had already put all the time and effort into it. Fast forwarding to today, since they decided not to buy, I was free to make the changes I felt necessary to make this deck a much more functional one, which leads me to Thrun the Last Troll. Thrun was the card I tried to convince them was a much better option for the style of build they were ultimately looking for. Let me tell you about him so you can see why I was trying to sway them this way. Thrun is a 2 green and 2 generic mana, 4/4 legendary troll with all the abilities you want for a Voltron type of general. He's uncounterable, has hexproof, and can regenerate for a green and 1 generic. Honestly, what more could you ask for out of a mono-green Voltron commander? My personal experience with this style of deck is quite extensive, so when trying to tell them that Thrun would be a much better option, I was trying to give them the best deck I could make them for their money. Sadly though, it didn't matter in the end anyway. Now, with all of that backstory out of the way, let me show you the rest of the deck, starting with the lands, and show you just how I went about building this really fun deck on a budget. So the land base is pretty simple. We're only a mono-green Voltron on a budget, so there's not a lot of stuff I could do here, especially from what I had. So I'll start off with what I could get. Mosswort Bridge has Hideaway. Hideaway says that when this land enters the battlefield, it enters tapped, and then you can look at the top 4 cards of your library, exile one of them face down, and put the rest on the bottom of your library. It taps that a green, and then you can pay a green, tap it, and you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost if you have creatures that you can, or if the creatures you control have a total power of 10 or greater. Since we're in Voltron, you're going to have that, so I figured it's an extra little card draw somewhat. Tyrite Sanctum, it taps to add a colorless. You can pay 2 and tap it to make target legendary creature become a god in addition to its other types, and you put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then you can pay 4 and tap it to sacrifice it and put an indestructible counter on target god. So it's to help make your troll even harder to kill than it already is. Rogue's Passage, because it's quite important to make it unblockable, so why not? Buried Ruin, because our Voltron is not going to be aura-based, it's going to be equipment-based, so this will help get one back if you need to, if for some reason it was destroyed. And then we're going to try and get some stuff out of your deck so you have better draws later. So Ash Barrens, it can be a land that taps to add 1 colorless, or you can cycle it away for 1 and go get a basic land. Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds, because again, we want to make our draws later better by getting all the land that we can out of the deck as fast as possible, either in the play or in our hand. And then this is why I said it's pretty basic. There's a lot of farce here. I don't remember the exact number. It's probably like 30, but anyway, you can take a look at this in the description. I will have the link to the deck list if you want to take a look at that. Moving on to the ramp section, this one's going to look a little different than most of the stuff I do. Normally, I let most people, myself included, like to do instants or sorceries that go grab lands and put it into play or in your hand, or they want to do mana rocks. I wanted something different. This is a Voltron build, and one of the weaknesses of Voltron builds is you only have so many creatures that you want to use. So to fix that, I wanted to actually use creatures for the ramp, so that the cool effect of some of them sack themselves to go get lands. You can block somebody, an opponent's creatures, and then sack them, so the creature still counts as blocked, and you can go get a land. So I'll show you what I mean. Neverwinter Dryad, 1 to cast 1/1. You can pay 2 and sack it to go search your library for a basic forest and put it onto the battlefield tapped. So what you can do here is, it's in play. If you block somebody's incoming attacker, you can block it, then pay the 2 and sacrifice it to go get the land, and your opponent's creatures will still be considered blocked. That's key in this deck. Diligent Farmhand, same thing, only it goes and gets a basic land instead of a basic forest, and it costs 1 green and 1 instead of 2 generic. Oshra Cultivator, 1 to cast 0/3, so a bigger butt, so it can block more, and then you can pay 3, tap and sack it to go search your library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield tapped. Fertilid, a little different. To use his ability that way, it's a little different. So he's a 3 to cast 0/0 that comes into play with 2 +1/+1 counters. You can pay 2 and remove one of those counters, and have target player search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. So you're probably going to still utilize that whole blocking and not sacking it because it won't sack, but removing the counters. So if you pay 4 to remove both counters, you can block a creature, pay 4 to remove the 2 counters, go get 2 lands, and still have that creature blocked. Farhaven Elf, so this one's a little different than the blocking and sacking and all that stuff. This one actually just remains a blocker, because when it enters the battlefield, you can go search for a basic land and put it into play. Same thing with Wood Elves, only you get to go search for a forest card. Now, this is forest card, not basic, so you can go get anything that has a forest subtype. Wild Wander, a little bit beefier. It's a 4 to cast 3/2, and then when it enters, you can search your library for a basic land and put it into play tapped. Quirion Trailblazer, same thing, only it's a 1/2. It's a little bit weaker, but it goes for a basic land and puts it into play. Greater Tanuki, this is one of the newer ones I'm playing with. So it's a secondary Voltron if you want it. So for a Voltron deck, you're trying to get 21 commander damage as fast as possible. If that plan fails, for some reason or another, you have to have other ways. So Greater Tanuki can be either or on this situation. It's a 6 to cast, 6/5 trampler, so it's a big body with trample. It doesn't have any built-in protections, but if you equip it with the right things, it can. But you can also, if you choose instead, and you need the land, you can channel it for 3, and it will go search for a basic land and put it into play. Here's the cool thing about the channel ability. Normal spells can be countered by regular counters. This has a specific thing that has to counter it. So it's an activated ability, so it can only be countered by activated ability counters. So it has to say specifically counter an activated ability. So it's kind of hard to stop this channel ability. And then another option as a win con, if Thrun for some reason is failing, they have it somehow, some way it's immobilized. Beanstalk Giant, you can do the adventure to go grab a land and put it into play, and then you can cast it for the 7 later to be a star creature where the power and toughness is equal to the number of lands you control. So again, another big beefy creature that you can equip and start attacking and get hopefully their life total down to 0 because it's not your commander, so 21 damage doesn't count here. Sereth Steelseeker is a more interesting card here. I have cards somewhat similar to this in the equipment section. Sorry, it's a 2 to cast 1/2 that whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you look at the top card of your library, and if it's a land, you may reveal it and put it in your hand. And if you don't put that card in your hand, you may put it into your graveyard or a quasi-surveil, if you will. So it's a equipment-based Voltron deck, so you're going to have a lot of artifacts to cast, so you can get those lands out of the way quicker. One of the old cards that I used to like to play with, back in the day we used to use this guy a lot. It's a 3 to cast 2/1 that when it dies, you may search your library for up to 2 basic lands, reveal them, put them in your hand, and then it also has the ability to pay 2 and sack it to draw a card. So in essence, this can actually be 3 cards into your hand. The creatures in this deck will be quite different than normal. So these are all going to be utility style creatures. They're not theme-based. This is all about utilizing the most you can out of them. Remember that thing I was talking about earlier where you can block and then stack them for an effect, which is to go get lands? These ones also have that as well. So we start with Caustic Caterpillar. It's a 1 to cast 1/1 that you can sacrifice, destroy an artifact or enchantment. That's the effects that I was going for, things that do things for you, but also can block. So instead of just doing spells that destroy things, I wanted creatures to do that because you want blockers. And then, surprise, they go ahead and do other things too. So Canker Bloom, 2 to cast 3/2. That's actually pretty good. For 2, a 3/2 is actually pretty good stats just as a vanilla creature, but you can also pay 1 and sack it to either destroy an artifact, an enchantment, or proliferate. Now, the proliferate isn't as important here. However, there are things in here that give +1/+1 counters, so it may be. You just never know. Depends on your board state. Reclamation Sage enters the battlefield and destroy an artifact or enchantment on a 2/1 body. Manglehorn is a 3 to cast 2/2 that when it enters the battlefield, you can destroy an artifact, and it makes it, when it's in play, that artifacts your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped. It seems like that's a nothing ability, but think about this for a second. That makes it so that mana rocks, the 2 to cast cheap ones, or even a soul ring, if it's in play, they enter play tapped, so they can't be used the turn they come into play. And it messes with treasure token shenanigans. So if somebody creates a whole bunch of treasure tokens, they're tapped when they come into play. They can't tap and sack them. Thrashing Brontodon, another one of those ones where the mana value, or the casting cost actually, and the power and toughness are kind of off. It's a 3 to cast 3/4, so as a vanilla creature, that would have been somewhat okay. But it also has the ability to pay 1 and sack it to destroy an artifact or enchantment. Acidic Slime is a 5 to cast 2/2 Death Toucher. Always good to have Death Touchers because that means that most of the time your opponent's creatures will die if it blocks. And then when it enters play, destroy an artifact, enchantment, or a land. Web Spinner's Cuff was actually one of the oddballs here. I wanted more of these. They don't have as many as I thought they would. But this is a 3 to cast 1/4 equipment creature. Okay, it's an artifact creature that counts as an equipment. It has this cool ability called Reconfigure that gives its abilities to the creature it's equipping. So this one is a 1/4 reacher that when it's an equipment, it gives the creature it's equipping +1/+4 in reach. Reconfigure is a little weird. So most equipment you can't unequip from something, you have to equip it to another thing. This one has the ability to unequip itself to come back to being a creature. This card is a creature whenever it's not equipped, and never a creature when it is equipped. So keep that in mind. So if it falls off of something, something dies, and it falls off of the creature as an equipment, it will turn right back into the 1/4 reacher. Brass Squire is actually quite important in this deck. It's a 3 to cast 1/3 that at instant speed you can tap it to attach an equipment that you control to a creature you control. That's important because at instant speed you can actually save something on the board, or you can do it during another player's turn, which is unusual for most equipment. And the last creature will be Suspicious Bookcase. It's a 2 to cast 0/4 wall that has obviously Defender because it's a wall, but it has a activated ability of paying 3 and tapping it to make target creature unblockable for the turn, which is very important to have that kind of an ability in a Voltron deck. Moving on to the next section. This section's quite hefty. It's a lot of cards. This is the equipment. This is what's going to make your Voltron Voltron. If you don't know what the term Voltron means, it just means having one big creature that keeps getting bigger and bigger and is hard to kill and does commander damage, or at least does a lot of damage, because there are Voltron builds for other formats, I assume. So, in ascending order of mana value, I'm going to go through all the ones and all the abilities that they do. So, we'll start off with the Quarter's Shield. It's free, basically. It's 0 to cast. It costs 3 to equip and gives the equipped creature +0/+3 in Vigilance, and it has a twin in Cathar's Shield. So I got 2 of them in there. And the reason for that is Vigilance was my most important thing I wanted in this deck, because I wanted the Voltron to be able to attack, but also be able to block on later turns, because most people, not all, but most people are afraid to attack into a really big creature because they're going to lose their creature no matter what they do. So it was a deterrent more than anything, so I wanted Vigilance a lot of, so I've got those. Next is a card that should have been possibly in the ramp section, but because I wanted the equipment to stay as close to each other as possible, I'll put it in this section. It's Explorer Scope. It's 1 to cast, 1 to equip, and then whenever the equipped creature attacks, not deals damage, but attacks, you can look at the top card of your library, and if it's a land, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. A little bit of ramp, great utility. Golem Skin Gauntlets. It's 1 to cast, 2 to equip. Gives the equipped creature +1/+0 for each equipment attached to it. This can make it really big really quickly. Remember, for commander damage is 21, so you're trying to get 21 damage on somebody as quickly as possible. This is going to help you get there. Leather Armor, 1 to cast, 0 to equip, but you can only activate the equip ability once per turn. It gives the creature +0/+1 and ward 1. Now, the ward ability is more for your other creatures because they don't have the built-in hexproof like Thrun has, so it's to help make it harder to kill other creatures as well, and give it a bigger butt so they can survive more, because those creatures also don't have the ability to regenerate. Team Pennant, it's 1 to cast, 3 to equip. Don't worry about the creature token, because I don't believe I have anything in here that'll make a creature token. It gives the equipped creature +1/+1 Vigilance, and one of the more important ones, Trample. Thrun's only downfall is he doesn't have Trample, so this will help get it to it. Infiltration Lens, 1 to cast, 1 to equip, and when the equipped creature becomes blocked by a creature, you may draw 2 cards. So another thing that is hard to do in mono green is have a consistent good draw. This will help you get draw. Kite Sail gives you, it's 2 to cast, 2 to equip, gives the creature +1/+0 in flying, because flying is one of the downsides to this deck. It doesn't have a lot. It has some reach, but not a lot of flying, so I doubled down and gave it 2 versions of that. Aeronaut Wings is the second one. Heroes Heirloom, 2 to cast, 2 to equip, gives the creature +2/+1, and as long as the equipped creature is legendary, which if you're using Thrun, obviously you will be, it gets Trample and Haste as well. Haste, not as important, but it could be. Haste could actually be the difference between a loss and a win sometimes, so that's nice to have. Prowler's Helm, so it's 2 to equip, it's 2 to cast, and then the equipped creature can't be blocked except by walls. So trying to make your commander as unblockable as possible was the key here, so that was one of them. This is another one. Trailblazer's Boots does something not as similar, but it makes it harder to block. It's 2 to cast, 2 to equip, and it gives it the equipped creature, non-basic land walk, which is to say, if somebody has something that's not a basic forest, mountain, plains, island, or swamp, they can't be blocked. Batterbone, it's 2 to cast, 5 to equip. This is where the Brass Squire comes into play a little bit because of the high equip cost. It's got Living Weapon, which means that when it enters play, you create a 0/0 black Phyrexian Germ, and you attach this to it. Then the equipped creature gets +1/+1, Vigilance, and Lifelink. And Lifelink is very important, which is why this card is in here, because you have to be able to stay alive. So remember, your Voltron may have 20 power and hit something. Doesn't matter if it's blocked or if it hits the player. No matter what, you'll gain the life. True Faith Sensor, 2 to cast, 2 to equip. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and Vigilance. Again, more Vigilance. And as long as the equipped creature is human, it gets an additional +1/+0. Now, not as important, but there are a couple of a couple of human creatures in the deck, and in case you need to go a different route, it's nice to have that flexibility. Hero's Blade, 2 to cast, 4 to equip. Equipped creature gets +3/+2. However, whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach Hero's Blade to it. So the play is that you're hoping to get this out on turn 2 or 3. Turn 4, put Thrun into play and attach this, and now Thrun is a 7/6. Really big badass that can regenerate, and you just keep on swinging. Thran Power Suit, it's 2 to cast, 2 to equip. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each aura and equipment attached to it, plus ward 2. Here's that ward again. I know that Thrun has built-in protection, but all your other creatures don't. And if you have to go a different route other than Thrun, it's nice to have that flexibility as well. Blackblade Reforged, 2 to cast, 7 to equip. Unless the creature's legendary, it's 3 to equip to a legendary. Luckily, Thrun is your answer here. And then the equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each land you control. And that's the reason why I have so many creatures in here that go and grab lands, because essentially, if it's turn 5 and you've got 10 lands in play and you can get this out in the play, you cast it, and you equip it to Thrun, I mean, adding +10/+10 is pretty beefy, so. And that's just a scenario. That's not necessarily how it's going to happen, but it would be nice. Fire Shrieker, 3 to cast, 2 to equip, gives the equipped creature double strike, so now it takes a power of 11 to hit somebody with, to commander damage them off the board. Haunted Cloak, it's 3 to cast, 1 to equip, Equipped creature gets Vigilance, Trample, and Haste, so it's keywords here. Tenza Godo's Maul, 3/2 cast, 1/2 equip. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, and as long as it's legendary, it gets an additional +2/+2. So now we're looking at +3/+3 for Thrun, making it a 7/7, and you can get that out into play before Thrun even hits. Not bad, huh? Locks on Warhammer, 3 to cast, 3 to equip. The equipped creature gets +3/+0, Trample, and Lifelink. Again, there's that 2 important keywords, Trample and Lifelink. Sword of Vengeance, 3 to cast, 3 to equip. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, and then keyword heaven here. First Strike, Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. Brass Knuckles, it's an interesting one. 4 to cast, 1 to equip. When you cast Brass Knuckles, you copy it, so you get an extra copy of it on the battlefield. And then when the equipped creature has double strike as long as there are 2 or more equipment attached to it, and that doesn't necessarily mean it has to have both Brass Knuckles attached to it. It just means 1 Brass Knuckles and 1 other equipment. And the last equipment, probably one of the better ones here, is Grafted Exoskeleton. 4 to cast, 2 to equip. Gives the equipped creature +2/+2 and infect, meaning that now any of your creatures that can deal 10 damage to something with this equipped is an auto win, or not win, but it removes them from the game. The caveat here is that whenever the Grafted Exoskeleton becomes unequipped from a creature, you have to sacrifice it. However, most likely you're not going to have to worry about that because the creature that's equipped with the Grafted Exoskeleton would probably die anyway, and you're not unequipping this from Thrun. Thrun will have to be removed in some way for this to fall off. Next up is utility. This is going to be things that destroy things. This is going to be things that help you draw cards or get cards in your hands, and so on and so on. So let me just get started. I chose fight cards for this deck as creature removal because Thrun regenerates, so it doesn't really matter if he takes a lot of damage. And most of the time he's going to be way bigger than what you're fighting anyway. So we start off with Prey Upon. Then we go to the instant version Pounce. Ancient Animist because of that +1/+1 counter that you can put on Thrun. Prize Fight for the treasure token. Epic Confrontation gives you a small buff, and then it fights something, gives the creature a small buff. Savage Punch, again, a small buff depending on the circumstances, and then it fights a creature. And then Spinning Wheel Kick is not a fight card, it's more of a bite card, in that it's more of a one-sided board wipe if you have enough mana. So, it's 2 green and double X. And for those that don't understand double X, for every 2 you put into it, you get 1 out. So if you pay 2 mana on top of the 2 green, it does 1 of whatever this does. So this thing says target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each of up to X target creatures and or planeswalkers. So if you pay 2 green and 4, you can now target either a creature and a planeswalker or 2 creatures, and your creature that you chose will deal its power to those creatures or planeswalkers. That's how that works. This is possibly with enough mana, again, I said, a one-sided board wipe. On the destruction side, we're going to go with Naturalize for artifacts and enchantments, Return to Nature for artifacts, enchantments, and maybe if there's a problematic card in somebody's graveyard, exile it. Atrax's Fall. Actually, this is one of the better cards that came out in March of the Machine. Destroy an artifact, a battle, an enchantment, or a creature with flying for only 2. They really power creeped this one up from the next card, Broken Wings, which is 3 to cast, only it's an instant instead of a sorcery, and it destroys an artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. So again, multiple things that kill creatures with flying because one of our weaknesses is we are not very heavy in flying. Reclaiming Vines destroys an artifact, enchantment, or a land if you need to. Desert Twister kills any permanent. Doesn't matter what it is. Could be a land, could be a planeswalker, anything. This is very good. Now, that's the reason why it costs 6. Not only was it an old card, it's actually from the original set, but it's one of the ways that green has to destroy a creature outright. Oops. Card draw-wise, not really card draw, so to speak. It's putting cards in your hand. Start off with Ancient Stirrings. 1 to cast, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You can reveal a colorless card from among them and put it in your hand, and then put the rest in the bottom of your library. Colorless. That means that it takes artifacts and lands for this deck. You can put one of them into your hand. And there are a lot of both, so that's actually quite useful in this deck. Seek the Wilds. You look at the top 4 cards of your library. You can reveal a creature or a land and put it in your hand, and the rest in the bottom of your library in a random, whatever. Put them in any order, however you choose. Gifts of the Gargantuan. 3 to cast. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature and or a land. So you can reveal a creature and a land, or you can reveal a creature or a land. And then put it into your hand and put the rest in the bottom in any order. So this can actually get you 2 cards into your hand. Again, not card draw, but close enough. This is actually card draw. Return of the Wild Speaker, it's 5 to cast, instant, that says you can draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control, and almost everything in here is non-human, there's only like 2 or 3. Or you can have non-human creatures you control get +3/+3 until end of turn. Now, the first ability to draw cards, very good. The second ability is very circumstantial. You may have a board state of a lot of non-humans, and it may actually win you the game if you give them all +3/+3, but most of the time you're just going to do the draw the cards. Enlarge, 5 to cast, target creature gets +7/+7 and trample, and then it must be blocked this turn if able. And that works great with Infiltration Lens, I believe was the card, where if it's blocked you draw 2 cards, so then you have that as well. Good synergy. Roaring Earth, I'm playing with this card a little bit because I kind of like what it does, and it depends on the deck that I'm putting it in. So it's an enchantment for 2 that has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or vehicle you control. Now obviously you're going to put it on your Voltron. And there are a lot of cards in here that go and get lands and put them into play. So the landfall effect is actually in play here. The channel, however, is a last-ditch effort. So the channel is to pay 2 green and X and discard Roaring Earth to put X+1/+1 counters on a land you control, and that land becomes a 0/0 green spirit creature token with haste. That's still a land. So if you're in desperate need of a creature that's big, I guess you could do that. I have it in here because the landfall ability puts counters on whatever your Voltron will be at the time, making it bigger and making it easier to win with. I like the theory of it. I'm hoping it works as well as I think it will. And the last card in the deck, repeatable card draw. I've said this many times in my videos. The way that we need to go in Commander now is repeatable card draw, unless the deck requires cantrip style stuff or spells that do it, because they benefit from casting spells. Other than that, repeatable card draw, kind of like Ristic Study. The reason why that's like a $20, $25, $30 card is because it's repeatable free card draw. This isn't free. It's also budget friendly, which is why it's in here. It's also an artifact, so it can go into the deck. It's 4 to cast. The landfall is that whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you can pay 2 to draw a card. It's repeatable card draw. It's not free, but it is repeatable and can happen quite often, because if you're putting a land into play, that's paying for half the cost anyway. So that's what I've chosen as repeatable card draw for this deck. And that, folks, is how I was able to take an unpurchased Odric build and turn it into a pretty nasty $40 budget commander Thrun the Last Troll Voltron build. I mentioned earlier that I have experience with this type of build, and you can check out my Ural the Miststalker non-budget Voltron video to see a different way to build a Voltron-themed deck. They can be quite fun and nasty no matter what your budget is. Next week, I will be showing you the third deck that suffered the same fate of having to be adjusted from a custom build that wasn't paid for and turned into a $40 budget commander build that I will now offer as one of my precons. That deck features a unique auras-based theme, so be sure to check back next week for that. Thanks for watching, and as always, if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or concerns, or you just want to talk or chat about any of the videos I put out, you can do so using any of the methods I have displayed here. Additionally, if you would like to support the channel, you can do so in 3 ways. Donations are accepted and greatly appreciated. I have 3 methods with which you can do so displayed on the screen, and keep in mind that no amount is too small. If donations aren't your thing, and you would like to get something for your money, that's great too. I sell a lot of the decks I present on the channel, as well as mystery packs. So, if you're interested in any of these, you can contact me using the information I have up on your screen right now. Directly contacting me is usually the best and cheapest way to do so, but you can always look at what I currently have available on the Facebook Marketplace. And lastly, if you want to show your love and support for the channel, but like myself, are a little strapped for cash, it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet, watch some videos and give them a like, and possibly share them out on your social medias you use to help spread my content to more people. No matter what way you choose is greatly appreciated and will help support the channel, and I thank you for it. Sadly, that is all the time I have for this video. Thank you for watching, and please, stick around and watch some of the many great videos I've posted over the last few years, and remember to check back again for new content I'll be posting every week. Have a great day.